Hi, so today we have with us Rahul Pandita, who's written Our Friends in Good Houses. This is his first novel, though he's written many non-fiction works before. Hi, Rahul.
Hi Manjula, thanks for having me.
Yes, so Rahul, like I was saying earlier, usually I stay away from novels because in a podcast, it's difficult to deal with them. And so I've usually taken the easy way out and stuck to nonfiction. And, maximum like fiction stuff that I've done are murder mysteries, genre novels, which are, I mean, relatively easier to talk about. But
Right.
this is actually the first novel that I've decided to tackle. So, so
I'm very glad you took it up, Manjula, but that doesn't make our job easy. I wonder what should we talk about? Yeah.
no, we can talk about, I mean, you've written from what I read the book at in one sitting, and I really liked it a lot, and it's very moving, and it's also kind of the mood of it sort of envelops you, you know, and one can see that you've brought in your non-fiction stuff as well, your reportage, into the novel. So you want to start with that, as a way into this conversation.
I think, over the last few years, I found it very difficult as a journalist to bring in some elements of my reportage in my journalistic work.
Mm.
I joke about it in the sense that, some of us came to this city to become journalists, not
Yes,
civil servants.
yes.
So I was not one of the many thousands who first went to Bay Sarai to prepare for civil services and then, failing which then I became a journalist.
Mm.
I came to journalists with a sense of cockiness, let's change the world, that kind of sort of thing.
Yeah.
So in the initial years of journalism here, I read the masters. There was Rizal Kapuscinski, there's of course Naipaul.
Mm.
So I try to do journalism in the finest tradition of what David Foster Wallace calls being a non-journalist journalist, which
Yes.
means that you do, you try to bring in elements of writing, good writing in your journalistic reportage as much as possible.
Mm.
But even after doing so for several years, from my field experience, I felt that there are some deepest experiences which did not find their way into my reportage. And mentally, I was dealing with it all the time.
Mm.
And in journalism, we also develop this conceit that we have to remain unmoved by people or the events which we see,
Yes.
to which I have kind of stayed true as much as possible. Um, but it would be dishonesty to say that I've not been moved by some people I've met in my life, or moved by certain experiences, my deepest experiences, as I call them. So then, several years ago, I came across this word, undrun, which then
Mm.
becomes the seed of this novel. And
Mm.
I started writing this around a protagonist whom I created, Neil, as you know. And I try to put in those experiences. Of course, it's fiction, but like I said, especially in the first novel, you bring in elements from your own life, from your own experiences. So
Yes.
that is what I have tried to do. And since I've spent a formidable time of my career traversing through war zones, especially Bastar, so
Mm.
then it became invariably the fact that that had I had to bring in that element into my first work of fiction. So that is what you see, and that is what is in your hands now.
Mm. And you know what also struck me about the book is that the women that you've created, you know, they have, I mean, I found them very moving and very real, you know. So, do you want to talk about that? I mean, of course, the men are also real, but I feel like, the women character, which is kind of rare often with, novels written by men. So I think this is it's a great thing, especially the Nakshal women are so well drawn out. Of course, the love interests are also very very nice, but I found those women very compelling. So we'll talk about that.
That is true, Manjula. So, Neil has his love interests. He's looking for this home,
Yes.
and he has a very sharp idea of home in
Mm.
his head. And this idea is not theoretical. It's
Mm.
there's a physical manifestation of this image, and in his
Yes.
head somehow this idea of home is intertwined with the idea of love.
Yes.
But since the idea of home comes with such a strong aesthetic, he has a very sharp imagery of how a home should be. But
Yes.
in real life, as you and I know, that the real life always falls short of that aesthetic.
Mm.
So he's perpetually looking for this home, and as a result of which, the substrata of which is also the fact that he's constantly looking for home, for love.
Yes.
So while he is going through his own life trajectory, at the heart of it is also the fact that he feels this. So the Maoist gorilla woman is not his love interest per se,
Mm.
but it's someone for whom he feels a dread in his heart.
Yes.
So there's an idea of friendship which remains unnamed in the novel, whereas the
Mm.
other women come and go, and there's a very sharp idea of love with them, and the fact that it does not work. But with her, her welfare, her the fact that she could die anytime.
Mm.
Uh, that is one dread which does not leave him at any point in time. So
Mm.
that kind of remains like a cloud in the back of his head. So you see, he's moving on with his life. He's trying to write. He's going from one wardrobe to another. He's dealing with his own personal life, but somehow there's always this the idea of gorilla this woman gorilla, Guru
Mm.
Priya, it comes and goes, so it always stays till the end.
Yes.
And then the end, as it happens, then the protagonist realizes that uh, the home is an idea which is not to be found in the exterior, in a building
Yes.
or
Yes.
in any sort of lust anywhere. It's a sanctuary which you have to build within yourself, the base camp as he calls it. So
Mm.
then he comes to terms with that idea towards the end of the novel, and so towards the end that journey is completed in that sense. But like I said, these stem from my own deepest experiences. Of course, it's fiction, but in my years of travel through what is called Dandakaranya,
Yeah.
one has met such women, and
Mm.
I have personally spoken to people and developed that bond with several of them, both men and women. But for the sake of this novel, I stuck to a female character, as you know.
Hmm. No, but you also have Gurmeet, who's another very strong character, and even Lakshman. The
Yeah.
men are, but maybe it's my own, miss bad, I don't know, idea. But generally, often I read male novelists. The women are not so sharply, and one doesn't. I don't know. They're usually more bimbo. This is. I was pleasantly surprised because these women were really, and of course even Gurmeet was a fantastic character that you created, and and through them you kind of told the story of the conflicts in India, right, of our conflicts. So you want to talk about that?
So when I started traveling to Bastar, I had my own personal history, Manjula, right?
Yes.
I had been evicted from Kashmir Valley, and I lost home like many thousands of others. But when I went to Bastar for the first time, I've said this in Aon article just yesterday.
mm,
Uh, and when I looked at other conflicts and
mm,
what it was doing to other people,
mm,
my own pain, my misery sort of faded in comparison,
mm,
Uh, because even in the worst of my situations, I had never touched the kind of pain or marginalization I found while traveling in hinterland India. And
mm,
the idea of displacement is not necessarily that you are evicted from your house, but there are
mm,
other circumstances which are sometimes created in your house. So if you look at the string of characters, right from Gurnam to Lakshman to Guru Priya and so on and so forth, plus including Neil, the main protagonist, they
mm,
are all in search of this elusive home. Now, the manifestation or the idea of home is different from them. For example, Guru Priya is looking for a completely different home. She's not only looking for a home for herself, but for a people
yes,
she feels responsible for. Gurnam is someone who cannot reconcile the fact that so many things have happened around his life, and finally he surrenders to the fact that he cannot he cannot attain that idea of home. And same with Annie and Neil and Arani and others. So at the heart, even that Adivasi woman, who I speak about
mm,
in the beginning of the novel and towards the end of the novel. So home is very much at the heart of this novel. But the sharpness of that home came to me from my travels in conflict areas. When you're traveling and when you see this small hut and people trying to safeguard that to the best of their ability, and um, getting crushed really between these two powerful forces.
mm,
For example, in the case of Dandakarani, and the Adivasis getting crushed from Indian state from one side and the Maoist guerrillas from one side.
mm,
So that kind of what it did to me in the initial years of my career is that because I had lost home myself,
mm,
I think what it did to me is that it created a sense for empathy for people who may have been going through some similar circumstances, and those similar circumstances is not necessarily, like I said, a physical displacement of home. But even the fear of losing home, or even the fear of the fact that their home may change, like many in Bastar do now, because the operation, anti-Maoist operation, is going on in full swings. The Maoists have surrendered now. But there are many people who fear that Bastar may change completely after these operations. So that sense of fear, that sense of pessimism, even, and for Neil, the sense of optimism that at some point in time in his life, he's gonna get this elusive home. So I think that is the connection with which I try to approach it through my experiences in conflict zones.
mm, mm. And and even the drawing up of Neil's father and his parents, that whole the characterization, and of course the father's also somebody who's lost home, but he seems more understanding at some level than the central character Neil himself. So,
So that's a coping mechanism which I've seen in many in the previous generations of Kashmiri Pandits,
hmm,
because Neil is a Kashmiri Pandit, right, and
yes,
he's someone who lives with his father. So the
hmm,
father has a certain coping mechanism which uh, Neil tries to resist in the beginning when he's in the younger days. His whole
hmm,
struggle is towards the fact that he should not become like his father.
hmm,
But as he grows old and as the vagaries of time hit him, he also realizes that he's every 5 years he's increasingly becoming like his father. So his coping mechanism is also getting developed in the real sense. In the beginning, when father, as fathers tend to do sometimes, you don't have sons always struggle with a dialogue with their fathers. There's no bridge between them, even in the best possible scenarios sometimes, right? So you're always looking for an idiom to cross that bridge from both sides. Even fathers try to do that bridge, but since that crossing that bridge becomes very difficult with language or conversation sometimes, so you try other methods. In Neil's father's case, he tries to be Neil's father, mother, even wife, like I say in the novel. So his language is this idea of protection, that he does not want to go anywhere. He does not want to leave anywhere, which creates a sort of schism in Neil's heart right in the beginning, because he also wants to feel as he feels trapped in the situation, right, in the beginning. But towards the as he grows, even in this short journey of a few years in the novel, he also realizes that his coping mechanism, his personal coping mechanism, may not be so different from his own father.
Mm. Okay. While you were saying this, of course, a lot of your personal experience is in this book. And of course, every first novel has that. I mean, we know that. So, how did you create a separation? That must
Yes.
have struck you that you need to do that, right?
Yes. So the initial drafts when I was working, so I started working on this novel in 2014. When I came across the word Ungrund, which I've used
Yes.
in the book, that was in 2014 when I was a visiting scholar at the University of Pennsylvania at its Cassie Center, the Center for Advanced Study of India. So that is where I came across. So sometimes, there's this one thing which creates a spark in your head. So when I came across that word Ungrund, which then becomes the seed of this book, and where Neil takes off from. So then that seed became that word became the seed of this novel. But when I started writing it, because I came from a very different training, and that training was as a journalist, as someone who has to stay true to facts, and someone who does narrative journalism in a certain way. So when I started even writing about things which I've seen in my own life, things from your own personal experiences, life experiences, which you try to put in the novel. And again, a disclaimer: a lot of it is fiction, also.
Yes.
Um, but of course, you like to, at least in the first novel, you like to play on your turf.
Yes.
The turf which you understand. So I understand Dandakaranya very well. So I understand war, conflict, what it does to people really well. I understand fathers, the equation between sons and fathers really well, and I understand the idea of Ungrun per se. But my biggest challenge in the initial months was that when I started writing about these experiences, it invariably became a journalistic exercise where I wanted to stay true to every single detail involved in that exercise.
So funny.
uh, like there's this particular incident in the novel where Neil goes to a place called Jagargunda in Bastar, and he sees this CRPF officer who's soldier who's suffering from malaria, and then in that delirium he asks him, "Kuch lana to nahi hai?" Because he's completely delusional. Maybe he's
Yeah.
seeing his wife or God knows what. So when so I have actually seen that event. But when I started writing that event, I realized in hindsight, after several weeks of writing, that what I was trying to do is, and then it became sort of a handicap, right? That you were trying to stay true to everything around it.
Ah.
Which then I realized, it came as a spark to me once that, oh God, what am I doing? This is not a piece for New York Times I'm writing, where I can take liberty with facts
Yeah.
around the event. So that kind of became a big challenge initially. But then I had to kind of detrain myself from that. You're looking at your own notebooks, some old interviews you're looking at, but the people have told you n number of things, and you want to stay true to all those n number of things.
Oh.
So then that detraining began. It took several months.
Hmm.
The other thing was that uh, uh, writers have all kinds of tools, etc. People have gone to writing workshops, people have done
Yes.
MFAs, etc., etc. And they have their own. I mean, what good for them? They have their own theories about what a novel should be.
Hmm.
So people speak about second-hand voice and omniscience and so on and so forth. Um, I just wanted to write it the way I really wanted to write, without getting into um, any kind of other people's notion of the craft
Hmm.
of writing a novel.
Hmm.
Um, the other challenge, not challenge, the other thing which I wanted to do is, and this goes beyond the purview of your question, but I'm going to say it anyway. What I've found, I mean, personally, this is my personal opinion, what I've found problematic in Indian fiction writing in English is
Hmm.
that when you start writing, I mean, it's not true for everyone, but many writers have read, your gaze is always at the West.
Ah, yes, of course.
So you're almost inventing characters to suit the narrative of a Booker Prize, or somebody in the West kind of discovering that you've written this, and this is worth something. So what happens is that invariably you end up ticking some boxes, which then you forcibly thrust as a part of a narrative. Now, there's absolutely no problem, and one should write about things. If you have a certain viewpoint about Kashmir, or if you have a certain viewpoint about Gaza, or if you have a certain viewpoint about LGBTQ, or if you have a certain viewpoint about the BJP, or anything, that's all fine, but it should not be forced into your work, just
Hmm.
because you are not only wanting to write a novel, you also have that idea of uh, what the Western publishers are. um, I wanted to steer clear out of that, uh, and I wanted to write a novel which comes from my deepest experiences, without bothering, without caring for any of these boxes.
Hmm.
And I think I also wanted to, I mean, I did not set out to do this, but I also felt that what Neil was trying to do through this novel is, since we're living in such polarizing times,
Hmm.
it is all right to love someone or care for someone or get involved into something beyond the binaries of left and right.
Hmm.
This extreme polarization we see now, just because, you see it on social media sometimes. If I say something and then someone will invariably come and say, how dare you say that? Do you forget your own history from Kashmir? What people have done to you? So, it's as if they have, just because they have posted twice on X, they own my life and soul, as if now my entire existence is like a hostage to what they want me to say. So through
Hmm.
Neil, the protagonist, I wanted to break free of those shackles. So Neil, like me, has a history. He has a history of exile from Kashmir. He is a believer in God. He takes great nourishment and succor from the Thilai Nataraja temple in Chidambaram, or he goes to Ramana Ashram.
Hmm.
But that does not stop him. And he has very clear idea about the importance of state. And, he's looking, he covers war. So he's a very practical man in that sense. But that does not stop him from feeling this sense of dread for someone, who believes in the idea of a communist Narnia. They are completely, he's not in agreement with his or her ideology, but at a very basic human level, he has a feeling. So towards the end, like I said, I did not set out to do this. So it was not formulaic at all that I wanted to do this. But
Hmm.
towards the end, I felt as if I had achieved it, and I felt happy about it.
Hmm. And what I liked also was this thing about the protagonist being all these things, and because that's the real. I mean, nobody, just because you believe in certain deities doesn't mean that you are, like how the social media, like you said, the social media world somehow wants everybody to be black or white, and
Yes,
we are not that. We are grays, right?
yes,
You can be a practicing whatever, Hindu, Christian, whatever, and still
yes,
feel empathy and a lot of sympathy also for
yes,
communists, who are Maoists who are out there, and that doesn't make you an urban nakshal
yes,
automatically,
absolutely.
in inverted commas. So
Yeah.
you brought that out. I don't know, consciously or what. You can talk about that.
Yes, so like I said, personally, I've always felt that about myself. Sometimes people come and say that we can't place you in terms of your politics, as if that is a bad
People
thing to
say
do.
that.
As if that is a bad thing. So people are very curious about you as a person. Okay, you have this particular history from Kashmir, but you have also spent X number of years in Bastar, and you have a certain very clear point of view about what has happened to the Adivasis, or you travel with the Maoist guerrillas and so on and so forth. But at the same time, you are someone who wears a veshti on Diwali and says Raja Ramchandra ki jai. So
Why not? I don't
yeah,
understand the place that we got to.
absolutely.
You
But
know,
now, we live in this polarized terms where, this tag, you have to put your tag right on your social media handle, say that this is what you should expect from my social media handle, and it will be very uniform, and it will not a single tweet from me or a single post from me on any social media platform will surprise you. I find it very insulting. It's an insult to any semi-intelligent, decent man who has done a fair amount of traveling and has seen things with himself.
hmm.
Uh, so invariably, it got this, and this is a personal belief I hold. So invariably, in my first novel, it gets transfused into the novel through Neil. So there is no, I mean, there's no commentary on this in the novel, as you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
But through his actions alone, he somehow gives this message that it's okay. It's okay because in the end, wars will come and go. Your social media followers will come and go. But ultimately, it's love that sustains us all. And it's my personal optimism that no matter what happens to this world, since we're living in such conflicting, polarizing times, entire world is in the throes of one conflict of another. I think it's my personal optimism that uh, even if the sun sets and darkness prevails, ultimately, uh, it's love that will prevail.
Very optimistic, I have to say. Which brings us, to the other kind of women in your book, the love interests. And the first one, Annie, is like all, I don't know, she's all sunlight, and she's so, you know, though she's, I mean, in a sense, because she's American, she's unfamiliar, and therefore also very appealing. And then there's the Indian women, Ada and Arani, you know and Ada, uh, I found her a very funny character at some level, because I've met people like this who, who get a nervous take if you speak in Hindi, or the convent school thing. And you've drawn that with just a few, just a few brush strokes. You've drawn a whole person. So, and of course, even Arani is like, she's, I mean, she's more fleshed out. So, tell me the thought process that went into creating these women. They're very different.
So the storyline has undergone several changes, till the last moment, till the last draft. And as as you can see, the novel is divided very neatly into three parts.
Yes.
Uh, so in the first part, if you see, no matter what is happening, Neil is dealing with Annie, he's dealing with the loss of Ada. He has his own coping mechanism, but not at any point in time does he lose his stoicism.
Hmm.
His mental position, no matter what is going on inside him, he's leaving New Haven suddenly and getting into a plane, dealing with his paralysis, dealing with this idea that even after so many years, 40 years, home has still remained elusive, right? And in the second in the second part of the novel, which is aptly titled Entropy, that
Hmm.
is where he loses all his sense of stoicism. He completely goes berserk. He loses controls of all his mental indices, right?
Hmm.
So that was crafted very deliberately to kind of justify the usage of entropy. So he loses all his mind, and towards the end, he gradually comes to terms. And then the third part, immediately in the third part, he regains that stoicism. So that was kind of deliberate. Now you also seen that Neil is someone who is dealing with life at a much deeper level. So he also engages with a lot of Western films, especially, right? So
Hmm.
there's Nietzsche, there's Eric Fromm, there are all sorts of Aristotle, Plato, all sorts of things. And through this character, what I also, there's this famous anecdote which Montaigne, the greatest essayist of them all, writes about this particular king who loses his kingdom. He's completely defeated, and then his family is paraded in front of him, but he does not leave his stoicism. And then a worker in his family, who used to work in it, like a servant of sorts, he's paraded, and then that's a tipping point. Uh, Something similar happens to Neil in Arnie's case.
Hmm.
So he does not lose his stoicism because he loses Annie, right?
Yeah.
And he has already lost Ada.
Hmm.
And as he's dealing with his personal life, Gurupriya is coming and going, and there's this sense of dread he feels for her. Anything can happen at any point in time. And then Arani comes into this life, this much younger woman. That becomes the tipping point in his life. So
Hmm.
that tipping point, I kind of remembered, and then all philosophy then is of no use to him because he completely loses his mind very very very, very briefly. But that forms the soul of the part two. And then
Hmm.
gradually, in the third, when he comes to terms with so many other things, that is also a kind of a philosophical lesson, towards the end that uh, no matter what happens, you have to move on, and you have to seek that sanctuary, which has been inevitably perpetually looking for. So the journey does not have to be in perpetuity.
Hmm.
Once you accept the fact that impermanence is the very idea, the very basis of life, then you can come to terms. Then there's a sense of acceptance which pervades him, his whole being.
That's
So
a
that's
very Hindu idea, by the way. I mean, you've quoted all these Western, philosophers, but this idea of impermanence is actually essentially Hindu. You
yes, absolutely. But Neil is a particular kind of character, right?
Yes, yes,
So he's all his inadequacies, which, as you know, are many. He tries to tackle them with the idea of, he's someone uh, who's an amateur philosopher, and
yes.
that is what that is how he describes things to himself, or
Mm,
that is how he comes to terms with things around him. That is how he makes sense of life around him. So I think that element for Neil was very essential in the what MFA students would call the character arc of the protagonist.
mm. So, so tell me now that you've brought up MFA students, now, like you said earlier, with all that theory and about how one should write, you know, I, I mean, this is not to do with this book, but generally, don't you think that, of course, I'm sure a lot of great books have been written using those methods, but there's a formulaic sort of feel to it, right? Because the great classics were not written by any MFA student, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
let's discuss that.
Yes. Uh, so there are various schools of thoughts, right?
Mm,
There are people who swear by the idea of a plot, uh,
mm,
right? The idea of plot, the sense of the fact that the story is going somewhere,
mm,
in terms of real events and characters, is very important for them, and they kind
mm.
of they kind of stick to that formula, if I may so say so. And then there is this European sort of novel, which is not plot driven at all. It's very experiential.
Yes.
Uh, though I did not set it out to be. I mean, I just wanted to write an honest novel,
Mm,
which would first appeal to myself. Hemingway, like he calls it one true sentence. Uh,
mm,
so personally speaking, I wanted this novel to be one true sentence for myself to begin with.
mm.
So of course, it's not complete. It's not as if the novel does not have a plot. It has a plot.
Yes.
But if I look at it in hindsight, I think it's a hybrid between an immersive experience and something which is conventional, like a plot-driven novel. Um, but personally speaking, I think that the immersive experience of a novel,
Mm,
uh, I attach much more importance to it
yes.
than the idea of plot. What drives me is the masters who inspired me to write. I mean, if you look at
Mm,
Naipaul's Enigma of Arrival,
yeah.
there's absolutely no plot in it. But there's not been a single week. Sometimes I fear that I'll lose the book. I have like 7, 8 copies lying all around. Every third day I get up and I'll read a passage from it. So there's this particular really moving preface he wrote, of one of the later editions, where he says that the book is old, but it's the new edition is in your hands, and he says that recently my French translator wrote to me. This is what Vidya says, Naipaul says, and he says that the translator, she wrote that, Mr. Naipaul, I don't know whether you know of it or not, but the book has a certain hypnotic quality.
Mhm.
So I think my aim as a writer is I don't know how much successful I've been, and I'm not comparing myself with Naipaul, but I think, though again, it's not something which I set out to do. That let me create this hypnotic, immersive reality. Uh, but in the later, when you write a draft and you edit it and it's there, after a point in time, and you deal with books all the time, and you have writers all around you, so you know the drill. After a point in time, the manuscript just does not make it stops making sense to you. You become blind to it, which is
Mm,
something you
mm,
can't uh, derive any sense out of. That is
mm.
where you create a distance between the manuscript and the writer himself. That is what I do. So after that benefit of distance, once you revisit it after a few months, that is where what you realize the essence of the novel is. So when I revisited that novel, and I showed he was very kind enough to give me time. Manu Joseph,
Mm.
he read the first draft and he's endorsed the book, and Shumana Roy. That's what Manu felt also, and I was very glad about the fact that he kind of felt that the book had a certain immersive quality to it,
Yes.
as he put it. So that made me really glad. Now, of course, how it is perceived or how it is received by readers is a completely different ball game. But for a first novel, I think I'm really glad that um, I did not tick any boxes, and I just experimented, and I wrote what I really wanted.
Hmm. And what also struck me was that, through this work of fiction, there are also some truths, I mean, generally truths about us today as a society,
Yes,
that kind of emerge. And that struck me when I was reading it, like, especially this conversation with Gargi. And the thing is that I've had conversations like this with people, and it really struck me. I think, this way where when she's come back from uh, Singapore or wherever, and he's
Singapore.
having
Yeah,
a conversation with her, and that whole paragraph, I found it very spot on. Yeah, the lamb chops arrive and she takes a few mouthfuls. She washes this down with wine. I couldn't live here anymore, she says, apropos to nothing. She has found it difficult to make her peace with he who cannot be named. It is a term in vogue among those who like to say such things. It refers to the chief of India's new political order, an order that has made redundant the beneficiaries of the old political order's Rajas. Gargi is not a part of Latyum's Delhi, but she still likes to believe that she's on the right side of history. So, I mean, so I was very struck by this because these are conversations we have, right, in our circles, and but nobody really has put them down, and though it's just a brief flash there, I was quite struck by it, as I was struck by the by the passages in the forest and the Dandakaranya and all those people, Jassi, right, and Gurmeet, and you know
good enough. No.
Gurnam, sorry, I keep calling him Gurmeet. So all that, so I think, it is a story of this person and him, his search for home. But I also saw in it a larger story of us.
Yes.
So you want to talk about that?
So, so it invariably happens, right? So,
Mm.
you're living in current society, and the person is a journalist.
Yes.
And personally speaking, as a journalist, I found it's funny so many times. You come back from a war zone, and you are full of you're full of emotions, right? You've seen terrible things, and you absolutely no way of dealing with what you see, even if you are trained to do so, etc., etc. But after a point in time, your training is completely waste,
Makes no, yeah.
because the enormity of what you've seen completely hits you.
Mm.
And then you suddenly come back and you're surrounded by, I mean, all of us are surrounded by these friends. I have friends who have seen two 15-minute videos on Israel-Palestine conflict on YouTube, and suddenly, they've become experts on Middle East. They suddenly they know everything about Gaza, and at a social gathering, they use they will use any bahana to steer the conversation to Israel Palestine so that they can show off their knowledge, right?
Mhm.
And but they but when you come back, you realize that what are these people even talking about? Their pain and misery or whatever they're feeling. I mean, they are entitled to feel that, but it is so small and minor uh, as compared to what Neil has already seen in so many places. So he can't balance these two. So then it becomes like a social commentary of sorts. On one hand you have people like Gargi. They have absolutely no sense of history, but they want to be on what they think is the right side of history. And how do they come to the right side of history? By just speaking about it, making a couple of social media posts. Then there are also people whom Neil's father refuses to kind of mingle with.
The
Your
WhatsApp
your
University
typical
RW
RWA
uncle.
uncles, who say, "अरे जी नेहरू तो मुसलमान था, आप तो कश्मीरी पंडित है, you know how it is done." So then all these tidbits everywhere, they are sprinkled. Even in America, because Neil lives in America through a very tumultuous time.
Yes.
When Trump is about to, one doesn't know whether Trump will become a reality or not. Ferguson is happening. And then
Mm.
his first impressions of America, right? This black versus white
Yeah.
people, and this terrible violence which he sees. And these oases which the United States has created, these Ivy League
Yes.
universities, wonderful Starbucks everywhere. But you move 500 meters past that, then the starkness of the poverty, the homelessness, the
Mm.
drug abuse, then it hits you. So then it becomes everywhere, every leg of this journey. It also becomes a social commentary of sorts, because
Mm.
as a person you cannot escape your own surroundings. These red
Yeah.
emergency buttons posted all over Yale University, for example. So what are those
Mm.
for? So even if you think of it as a film, when the camera is moving and the protagonist is moving, you see it all around you happening. So
Mm.
as a writer with a certain social consciousness, political consciousness, I thought it's important to bring in these elements, but bring them in the sense that it does not feel like I'm ticking those boxes.
Yeah.
It gets very organically into the part of that narrative. So that
Yes.
is what I did. Very I mean, I thought about it, and then I did it. It was very planned.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could keep talking, but I think, like I said again, enjoyed is not the word. I don't know what the word is, but it was really an immersive experience, and uh, I found myself thinking about a lot of things also. So I think your novel has succeeded, in moving the reader, at least, definitely. So.
I'm very glad to hear that, Manjula.
So, are you working on something else? I mean, I just have to ask that though. But it's a bit soon, I would imagine.
I don't know. I'm kind of looking at a few things, but at a very preliminary stage. In the process, I was telling my editor Dharmi Bhaskar also. I think while writing this novel, I also realized that there are certain truths which you come closer to in fiction than in non-fiction.
Yes.
So I think I would definitely like to explore this genre more uh, in future. But before that, I might return to my first love, which is journalism, nonfiction. In what shape and form, I'm still deciding, but it may happen sooner than later.
Hmm. Though, when I was reading this, I mean, and of course, he also has, he works as a screenwriter as well, Neil. And I was thinking, if this, I mean, it's a very difficult project to make it a web series or something, but it can be done, though it's very challenging, right? What do you think? Something like a book like this, of course, there's so much internal action. How would you do it?
from your lips to Netflix CEO or whoever. But I don't know. I mean, there's a promise there. Maybe in terms of extracting one particular portion out of it and then creating it into a movie, which is
Ah,
very much possible. Or otherwise, like you said, I mean, you began from that premise. Turn this into a series of sorts, which then also becomes um, a new social commentary of sorts about
yes.
how to live in these polarizing times. All of
Yeah.
us are dealing with this, and uh, like I said earlier, I think if done well, an overwhelming sense of message will come across that ultimately, the future is love, and we must embrace that possibility. For God's sake, we must do that.
Okay. And on that optimistic note, I'm afraid I'm like, very cynical person. But yeah, I guess that's the solution, right? The I mean love. I don't
Uh, I'm suffering from a novelist's optimism right now, Manjula. But once I go back to journalism, I don't know how I will feel about it. with,
know.
this,
Okay.
with this with this AQI, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, for the listeners, go out and get Our Friends in Good Houses by Rahul Pandita. It is a very moving book and it makes you think, and it's I don't know, it's immersive, and I really liked it a lot. So thank you, Rahul, for talking to me.
Thank you, Manjula.